FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz, and today is, well, it's tax day, but it's not. It's April 15th, 2020. Normally, you would, if you were like me, you would be filing for your extension now, so you could file in October, but the U.S. government, the government's here to help, and they've given you until July 15th, and I'll still file in October because that's just my nature. It's my least favorite day of the year, so at least today I'm able to enjoy it because I don't have to care about it for a good 6 months. Well, you probably have been watching the stimulus. There's a million YouTubes on it. A lot of them are not as accurate as I would like them to be, but person you're going to hear from, I got a channel, and his is dead on accurate as anything can be. And I have to really qualify that because this thing changes minute to minute, day by day. They're literally making the whole thing up as they go along. And with that in mind, it's impossible for any one person to keep up with it, but this person really has. And I want to know your opinion of the stimulus. Are you applying for it? If you're not, you're really crazy, or you're super wealthy, and why are you listening to me anyway? But if you are going to do it, then this information is vital, and I want to hear from you. Email address kl@kerrylutz.com. Write me at kl@kerry, Kerry, Lutz.com. So this person you're about to hear from, his name is Joshua Jensen. And then Joshua, you go by the name or the AKA of JJ the CPA. So who better than you to have on and talk about stimulus?
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that, Kerry. It's an honor to be on the show. And yes, it has been a challenge, and it is refreshing. This is my 27th tax season, and never in my career, and maybe never again, will I not be wanting to light up a cigar and maybe have some kind of a cocktail come 5 p.m. today on April 15th. So it's nice to be in an environment where I can do a show and be a little relaxed. And we've got a little bit more time till July 15th, which is much needed. Yeah,
definitely much needed. And you've been doing an amazing job. And that's not a compliment that I pay lightly. But the fact is, you're so fact-based, and you don't make any statements that aren't fully backed up. I mean, when you say I'm thinking, or you're speculating, or drawing a conclusion, you say you are. And that's something that really is necessary here, because a lot of times you don't have the answers, right?
Right. Absolutely. And when you talk about making it up minute by minute, the government, for all of its fallacies over time, or even in this, it has been rolled out, amazingly quickly, especially with this Paycheck Protection Program. I have been a little disappointed in the timing of the stimulus checks. Only from the standpoint of those that are getting these $1,200, $2,400 to adults in a household. I think they just needed it quicker than what it's coming. Yeah. And I'm not sure why it's taking so long on that. But the PPP that I've already have clients getting, $40,000, $150,000, $3.2 million already, that is amazing.
And so the PPP, that is amazing, because literally it was signed 2 Saturdays ago, I think, the 27th of March. It got signed in the morning, and websites that Sunday, the SBA's website, bank websites. I think the main delays in the PPP are the banks. The government, they could just print the money up. Doesn't matter. And it's the banks say so. And they have no liability if they've been defrauded or anything else. They're totally indemnified. They get their 500 basis points for processing this loan. This is free money to the banks as well. But the banks, I bank at Citibank, they just got their portal up 2 days ago, I think on Sunday, and then their document portal was up a day later. So I've been banking with Citibank since 1976, if you can believe it.
Oh my gosh.
Do you think the banks are giving any preference to you based on how big a stimulus check you're going to get, or they're just processing it all first come, first serve?
Well, I think the banks are pretending that they're treating everybody equally. I think that the sole proprietor, self-employed, independent contractor, and I just say it factually, are getting the short end of the stick, because I put together a video and I asked everybody to comment in there if they're having issues. And it's amazing across the nation. Every state, every bank that is a larger bank is the one that's really causing the issues. But I will say this, when you're talking about the documentation that the larger companies are providing, and when you look at what the banks are then having to approve it based on, it is the 941 in essence, or the W-3,
right?
Some receipts on the health insurance, receipts on the retirement. And so to be fair, those that have employees, it is easier for those companies to process it. But you bet, and I've said it in a couple of my videos, I mean, it's only natural that any company is going to pay attention first to the larger ones. The larger ones probably even have their documents in there. I think the larger companies have those personal relationships. But at the end of the day, here's what I've been surprised by is banks adding requirements. I almost think it's shameful in some regards.
Yes.
I don't know if it'll end up being illegal, but it has been amazing, the banks adding requirements that have slowed the process.
Yeah, and one of the cool things, Citibank did not see it add anything. Theirs was the easiest. I checked out some other portals, and I just went through the process, even though I wasn't going to sign up for it. But Citibank literally streamlined the form, the original form that the SBA put out. So you just click boxes. And then for your documents, they didn't say upload this document, upload that document. It was just upload all your documents at once. And they made it a lot easier. Now, of course, I haven't heard anything from them, but I got to believe they were one of the big banks, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, JJ, they had allocations of funds pre-allocated to them. So BOA had 22 billion or something, and Wells had whatever they had, 12 billion, and each bank got an allocation. So it didn't really matter what they had there.
Yeah, and I think that on that allocation, yes, there's a certain dollar amount. I know Wells Fargo, they place their own at 30 billion. And some of the requirements that they've added are providing financial statements or actually looking at credit. They're wanting documentation of how that money is going to be used. And I think what banks were doing is trying to hedge their bets on what kind of businesses are going to get these funds, that it won't be forgiven, because they're trying to predict how much they're going to have to carry, which if you're making 1% money, which originally in the law it was 4% or up to 4%. But then on April 1st, they said it'll be 0.5%. On the 3rd, they said it'd be 1%. Banks don't want to carry 1% loans because they still have to keep the same reserve. So I understand that. But at the same time, my feeling is if you've accepted the money, you don't get to pick and choose who it goes to. If you qualify, then you need to give the money. I understand if you're not a customer, but if you're a customer, and then the other thing is I'm hearing over and over and over is, well, you have to have a business account. Chase is indicating you have to have a business account and a lending relationship with them. I'm predicting some class action suits that I think will be well-deserved. I think I'm predicting that there's going to be some fines to pay. And I've been telling people, if you're getting denied or any of that baloney that they're telling you, keep the documentation so that you can be part of the payout that's going to come at some point. In some ways, it's just disgusting.
I totally agree with you, because it's not their money that they're loaning out.
Exactly.
They've got obligations, but look, they got bailed out last time. Now, I will mention, just as a point of information, that Wells didn't want the bailout last time. They were forced to take it because the Fed said, well, if you don't take it, then there will be a run on the banks that do take it, because people will perceive them as being less stable and more in danger than you. and we're not going to let you capitalize on it. But as a result of the last financial collapse, Wells became the largest retail bank in the United States. So they have an obligation, and their obligation is not to add additional hurdles because this money is supposed to get out there. I've heard of people getting it. It's starting to stream in. Going back to the stimulus checks for a moment. So like you and I, we never get refunds from the IRS. We only pay. Right. It's strictly a one-way street with us,
Absolutely.
with you and me and the IRS. So now they're going to have this portal. First, they have a portal for people who haven't filed their 2018 taxes, all right, or 2019, so that you can put in your direct deposit info and your proper mailing address. So the non-filers, the people who have not done what they're supposed to do, and granted, some people could have reasons for not filing 2018, especially if you don't owe them any money, or if you made less than $24,000 and a whole bunch of other things, you don't have to file. But for non-filers, they get to the front of the line for the stimulus checks. Doesn't that kind of irk you?
Yeah, it does seem unfair. And, on the non-filer, if you're reading in the fine print, which, it's probably rare that somebody's going to pay attention to that, it does indicate, if you didn't have to file, just as you said, you're under 24,400 for 19, 12,200. Go ahead and get your information into us, and we'll go ahead and get that processed. They did indicate if you're getting SSI railroad benefits that they're automatically send it. One of the biggest questions I've had is, for those that set up payment plans and they're providing the bank account to then send money to the IRS, will the IRS use that? In the past, and I understand it's unprecedented times, but in the past, those have been kept in two separate vaults.
Correct.
Money going out is kept over here. Money coming in is kept over there. So I don't know if they'll do that. It'd be nice if they did. But what would be nice is for those that have the payment plans, for those that are paying in their taxes, and if you're paying a payment plan, you're compliant. It would be nice if they also were at the front of the line, given that they have already provided their banking information as well.
Yeah, well, there's a Chinese wall there. And the reason is very obvious, because if you give them information to make payments and then they use that information to enforce against you, that will reduce so-called, and I put this in quotes, voluntary compliance. So, so the idea of not using that information to your detriment and keeping it segregated, if you will, there is a good policy reason. So EIDL loans, nobody knows what the heck they're about, but it seems like there's a boatload of money that businesses are not availing themselves of. How do we, and I won't even go into the EIDL Advance, which started out at $10,000 and now is $1,000 an employee. But hey, you take every bit you can get, because even if you don't, I tell people, JJ, even if you don't need the money now, you don't know what's going to be in 6 months, because this could carry on economically. Forget about the virus itself. We all have our opinions on that, but the damage, the fallout can really continue on for months. So you need to take this money. Hey, if you feel bad, pay it back later. That's what I tell people, right? Yes. If you feel that bad, just pay it back after you find out you didn't need it. But if you need it, you're going to be really happy you had it. EIDL loans, those are economic injury disaster loans. It's kind of the SBA FEMA program. Whenever you hear of tornadoes sweeping through, an area or a flood or a hurricane, and they say it's been declared a disaster area, that means you're qualified for these EIDL loans, which, from my understanding, and just jump in and let me know if I got anything wrong, you have to personally guarantee it. It's a long-term loan, 10 to 30 years, I think, at reduced interest rates, I think up to 4%. How do you go about getting it, and what criteria do they use for that, JJ, if you know?
Yeah, and just to make sure, that's one of the differences. And I know you said we'll skip the advance, but just to be sure, on the advance, that's only at SBA.gov, and the slang for it has become the COVID-19 disaster loan, but it's exactly the EIDL.
Correct.
And up to the 10,000, it's no collateral, no guarantee. You don't have to pay it back. But above that 10,000, it's exactly what you indicated. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, SBA loans are harder to get than regular loans. And part of that is because the federal government is backing it. So it does require guarantees. Typically, it's going to require collateral. It can be up to 30 years, as you indicated. And it right now is at 3.75. I don't know any bankers right now that probably have time to mess with it. But what you want to do is find a lender. And at SBA.gov, they have a section where you put in your zip code, and it'll give you a lender in the area to let you know who the SBA lenders are. And obviously, you know that there are SBA lenders. They're just not necessarily every bank. And I know banks use it kind of as a pride point of saying that. But I've never seen it that way. I've always seen it as, oh, great, we're going to have more documentation to provide and have more hurdles. So it's in some ways it's harder to get it. I don't have any experience in knowing if it's going to be easier in these times, but I doubt it. I think it's still going to be just as difficult, because so many times really the SBA is for the expansion, a purchase, the building. It's not really been designed for disaster recovery, helping you get back to square one.
Yeah, two things. According to SBA.gov, and I have no idea if it's so or not, they've waived the collateral requirements and a streamlined application. I think you're still going to have to submit financial statements, probably last 2 years tax returns, personal and company. And from there, I wonder, like so many companies show a loss, whether they're going to loan money to a company that's losing money. So if you were lucky enough to make money in 19 and lose some in 18, then maybe you can get it. So we're kind of speculating here. We don't really know. And those things, I haven't heard any of them going out. I've heard of some EIDL advances hitting, anecdotal evidence, some people on YouTube, other people in our Facebook group, which we'll have a link to in the show notes here. But otherwise, I've not heard of any EIDL loans. So it might be a good idea, if you're going to go that route, if the PPP is not going to be enough, get in there now, find a credit union, I think they have these SBICs that are still around. I don't know. I haven't looked at it in years, but that's a small business investment company that makes SBA loans. And that might be a potential avenue here. So looking down the road,
if you don't mind, I'll throw in there.
Sure.
You're absolutely right. But on the SBA, they waive the collateral and the guarantees only up to $25,000. They do waive the aspect of the collateral potentially up to $250,000. But then anything above that, it'll definitely be collateral and guarantees and whatnot. So for a business that's looking at that, and then also with businesses where the PPP doesn't make sense, they've got the employee retention credit.
Oh, yes. We should talk about that.
Definitely an either or, so to speak. I think there's a little bit of different way to approach that. But nonetheless, the simple, the vanilla version of all that is if you're not doing the PPP, do the employee retention credit.
Yes. Okay. And one other thing. So I haven't heard this discussed. I'm sure you've thought of it, though. So if you're an independent contractor, and let's just call it independent contractor, self-employed, Schedule C, sole proprietorship, whatever you want to call it, you don't have a real company. You're a Uber driver, you're a carpenter, whatever, or you've got a LLC, but it's disregarded entity for tax purposes. Unemployment can be the better way to go here than PPP or EIDL or anything else, because under unemployment for the next 14 weeks, you're going to get an extra $600 per week in certain states. Well, I'm in Florida. Florida pays a generous rate of $275 a week, no matter what you were making. But for this, they're going to pay for sole proprietorships and self-employed people. You can apply for unemployment. And even though you've paid no FUTA or SUTA taxes, you can apply for it. And in Florida, you'd be getting $737.50 a week. Now, I guess that is taxable. It's still going to be taxable under the rules. But unlike everything else, you can just get that And they're waiving the work requirement, looking for work, all of this stuff for at least the next couple of months. If you know that you're going to be employed again within 6-8 weeks, everything will be back to normal, then maybe it's not the way to go because you wind up with less money. But if you're lower paid, let's say you're making $50,000 a year, then you would be earning $4,000 a month. All you could get back from EIDL, from PPP, would be approximately $12,000. Or no, is that right? About $10,000.
Yeah, $10,000 on $48,000
right.
Payroll cost. Yes,
exactly. But if you go to unemployment, you could get far more back. Plus, they'll probably extend that $600 per weekly payment, and it'll probably go for at least 28 weeks. Maybe it'll go for 39. Who the heck knows? Other states are varying, but generally, my understanding is most states are paying half of what they would normally pay in unemployment benefits plus the $600. You go to a place like Massachusetts, highest in the nation. If you have dependents, you can get up to $1,234 a week. So if you got half of that plus the $600 extra added unemployment benefits, insurance benefits, you'd be getting $1,250 a week, in which case, if you go for 10 weeks, you're far better off. Now, obviously, you have to be a higher income taxpayer. I think it might go up to $70,000. But even if you're doing $70,000, so then the most you're going to get in PPP payments is $17,500. The most you can get is basically $21,000 in PPP payments for yourself. All right. And in this case, you wouldn't be able to get that much at $70,000. You'd only be able to get $17,000. Here, you'd be getting $1,200 per week, thereabouts, or at least $1,000 if you didn't have the dependents. So it could make more sense to file for unemployment than it does to go through the whole rigmarole of bank portals, documents, and everything else. I think you make a certification on most unemployment websites because they can't check payroll records now for you because there aren't any. And you start getting your unemployment. Now that, of course, also has been late kicking in. I think the 600 is going to kick in this week, and it'll go back retroactively, they said, from February 15th. And this is what the whole stink was about passing the stimulus, because they said it would become a disincentive to work. Honestly, I think just getting out of the house, JJ, after all this time, getting away from the kids who are driving you nuts, the wife, everything else. I mean, I love my family, my kids, but, just getting out, getting back to work for most of you out there would be a major relief. You would be kissing the ground of of your office and your company just to get back to work, because we realize in this time being locked in for, over a month now, how central work is to our identity as people and our sense of worth.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Arcana Corporation is on the verge of bringing the world's highest grade silver mine into production. The Revenue Virginius mine in Colorado has proven improbable silver reserves grading nearly 37 ounces per ton silver, with an all-in sustaining production cost of only US $8 per ounce of silver. The mine is fully permitted with infrastructure already in place, and the company has announced they plan to commence production in 2020. Achieving successful production usually results in a significant upward share price re-rating on the Lassonde curve. Arcana trades under the ticker AUN in Toronto and AUNFF in New York. To learn more, go to arcana.com. That's AURCANA.com.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Absolutely. And, from my perspective, I think when you're talking about the unemployment, I've actually gone the extra step of just telling people, let me say, the self-employed, right? If you're not going to qualify for a bunch, that's going to run out. Really, if you're doing it the way you're supposed to, right? If you're following the speed limit, it's PPP, then EIDL, then you go to unemployment. If you get the EIDL before the PPP, you, in essence, have guaranteed yourself the amount of your EIDL will then that'll be an amount of your PPP not forgiven. You never pay back the EIDL. But, now is as low as the EIDL is. Why not get your $1,000 if you're the self-employed? On the PPP, it's going to be based on your Schedule C.
Yes.
Many that file Schedule C are going to have lower amounts, especially the gig. And then basically if those things are working properly and you're getting your money right away and you're in a state, which right now, if I had to project, I want to say that only maybe 20% of the states are actually offering that federal unemployment.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like in my home state, they're still confused that the self-employed qualify. But nonetheless, what I tell people is, if you're getting those dollars and it's going to take you 1 to 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks for you to get that unemployment, get the benefits that you can. And just like you said, you can always, in quote unquote, pay it back. So if somehow you ended up with double benefit and you go before the bank on your PPP, you can pay that back. I don't think you would need to if you're following that order, but you are absolutely correct. You absolutely have to look at, does it even make sense to do the PPP if you can get on that employment right away? Because probably for most, within 2 weeks, for a lot of these self-employeds that I'm interacting with on my YouTube channel, within 2 weeks, you would be getting more from unemployment. And right now with the sole proprietor, the self-employed independent contractor, all in the same boat, really, they're not even getting the PPP.
Yeah.
They're not even getting the EIDL. So at this point, I've almost said to some, like, just throw Hail Marys on all three. Let's go, because you need the money. Like, rent's past due at this point.
Yeah, that's a great point. Apply for all of them. You're not supposed to put in multiple applications for PPP, and I don't know that they're even screening for duplicates. But honestly, I would put in multiples because the banks are so screwed up. You don't even know if your thing's going to get processed. Put it in, and then just refuse to take the second one if it comes through. Don't take it.
Great point.
Because it doesn't cost anything to apply. There's some online portals that I guarantee you, JJ, will be way more efficient than your average bank, like Kabbage. That's KABBAGE.com. All right. I had a credit card from them. They just were calling and calling. I said, fine. I've never used the thing, but they had me in their system. So, I thought about applying through them. But their whole thing is they don't have any costs. They're strictly a web portal, other than what it takes to support they're basically a business credit card, but they've gotten overwhelmed. But they know how to process e-docs. They know how to process loans, and they know how to do it cheaper than anyone else. They probably got people in, foreign countries going through your docs right now. Point is, they might very well do it quicker than others. And I don't know, there was a certain part of PPP that was reserved for these electronic portals, and they're probably the biggest of them. So it might do to file multiple apps, because let them race to give you the money. You're in a race to get it. Let them race to give it to you, and see who comes through first. The one thing I have said on that, Kerry, is, if it's a larger amount, it could cause a flag if they happen to, be able to check. But I will say this, that I read an article yesterday that PayPal, Intuit, Square, and some of the other smaller players are getting into it. They're there. And just to your point, they get it. They understand the e-documents. And in the law, it literally says to the banks, do not look at credit elsewhere. Yeah.
It arrives approved. All you have to do is verify, in essence, the identity and make reasonable inquiries of the information. But when the SBA came out with guidelines and then additional FAQs, they made it clear to the banks, you are not responsible. If the information is reasonable, give it. So the banks that are asking for additional information, and then there's going to be basically some monetary damages to businesses that had to wait. I'm usually a defender of the banks. If you don't mind, I'll say I've got a book. It's called JJ the CPA.
Please,
you can get on Amazon, if you don't mind me saying that.
We'll put a link to it. Yeah, in the show notes.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But I have, probably 10 of the 60 chapters, which are all very short. But it's the top 60 questions of the last 27 years of my clients. But 10 of them are defending banks and telling people, stop getting emotional if they need the documents provided, et cetera. But in these circumstances, I have not been defending the banks. I've been a criticizer of the ones that are adding additional hurdles. And I hate to say it, but I hope that there is a monetary slap on these banks and the people at the top that made these decisions. It's almost it's almost a crime when you now have individuals that are laying off employees because their bank still hasn't approved it because they're still waiting for information. That they are not not required to need.
Yeah, absolutely. And the things that they pulled to dissuade you from going through them is just totally wrong. Right. And look, I understand them putting monetary limits on because there is a limit to what they want to do here for the bank, but it's zero risk and there's totally no excuse for what they've been doing. Hey, one other thing we should talk about, and then I'm going to let you go because I know you're busy. Mortgage forbearance. All right, that's part of the stimulus. Now, I talked to a mortgage broker yesterday and I didn't want to really embarrass her, but she really didn't know anything about it because the law specifically says, and as it's promulgated, the regulation is really more important than the law. In this case, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, has put forth a law, and it says you're entitled to 2 forbearances, one first 180 days and another 180 days, effectively a year. And they say that it's an absolute right. You just have to self-certify that you've either been directly or indirectly harmed by COVID-19 and 1 to 4 units. If you have more than 4 units, then you can get 30-day forbearances. But the banks and the servicers have done exactly what you're talking about here it's mainly the servicers, putting up obstacles and placing additional demands other than what the law requires, and trying to say, well, then it's all going to come due on the 7th month or the 12th month. You're going to owe all those payments that you missed, that you didn't make, when in fact the FHA has said for forbearances, we don't look for collection of them till the end of the term. So this is a perfect example of banks really overstepping the bounds.
Absolutely. And, it is also very similar for student loans, the ones that are federally backed. And my understanding of that, Carrie, is that it is almost, from when it goes on forbearance to when it then kicks back in, is that it's like only a day past, meaning you're not past due, you're not making up past payments. No interest is supposed to be accruing on that. It's supposed to just put you in the same position as though 1 day past, doesn't matter if it's 30, 90, or 180. But you do have to request it. It's not an automatic. I do think, and just to your point, you need to follow up with the banks. You can self-certify. And again, the banks that are going to then affect credit related to this, because I've already heard with some of the YouTube followers and commenters that have already been given late notices and have looked at their credit. And now this might be somebody that's maybe got behind maybe before this was put into play. But the biggest thing I'm telling people is get ahead of it, call the creditors, follow up, make sure that there's going to be banks getting whoopings over this, well-deserved. And more well-deserved, though, are the ones that it affects. I hope that there is going to be fines that they have to pay, but that directly goes to those that have been affected by it. Yeah,
and I think it will happen. I totally agree with you. They've just taken liberties here that they're not entitled to. And hey, we're just going to have to see what happens. JJ, just tell us a website where we find you, how we connect with you, and if you can take emails from people and such.
Yeah, really appreciate that so much. And thanks for having me on your show with the listenership. It's just an honor. I would tell you this, anywhere you go, JJ the CPA, if you hashtag it on any social media, you'll find me. My YouTube channel, I'm putting out 2 to 5 videos a day, which is JJ the CPA. My website, Carrie, I put together a free, no nonsense, no hassle, no free webinar. Don't give me your email address website. And it's jjthecpahelp.com. I put it up just for this so that there be no mistake that it has nothing to do with gaining any business. And on that, you'll find a lot of different information. The email is jj@jjthecpahelp.com. And I've been going live every day. I meant to do it one day and I went live for 3 hours and 45 minutes, but every day, 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, I'm going live. Yesterday, I went live for 6 hours answering questions and emails, and I still had 100 to get to. So I'm trying to help, and there's no fees, there's nothing, but I've been surprised. People have sent me money on Venmo. I've been sent dinner. So people have been very appreciative, but I'm happy to be helping. Thank you again for all the compliments at the beginning of your show as well.
Well, they're heartfelt, and you're doing great work. And hey, it'll only come back to help you in the future. But I know that's not your motivation here, that you really do want to help people. The same reason we're doing it, same reason we set up the Facebook group. And we'll definitely stay in touch here, because this is just the beginning. This stimulus is going to be going on for months, if not years, and the litigation will follow. And I'm not even thinking about that. Hey, I'm a retired attorney. I don't really deal in that world anymore, but it's so important to stay up to date. I can't tell you how many people, JJ, don't even know that they can get the stimulus. The woman who cuts my hair, clueless about it. Other people, other contractors that I use don't even know that it's available. And really, like we know, this could be the ultimate lifeline that really makes the difference between whether you reopen your business or not. Now, you and I, probably work from our homes. We don't really think about this, but it's affected my business to some extent. But, I'll survive it. But a lot of you out there, really, people, you've been living paycheck to paycheck, go for the unemployment so you get the immediate money.
Absolutely.
I've heard of people getting the unemployment, but only getting the state portion of it because they're waiting for it. So then you're just going to get a big hit. You'll get a retroactive payment of X amount of weeks of it, whatever it is, can make all the difference. And then if you got to give something back, you'll give it back. But in the meantime, you don't need the money in 2 months or in a month. You need it now. And, as much as I despise many things that the U.S. government does, this is one thing that they really have sincerely done a really good job with. And we should be grateful to them for doing it this quickly. I don't know that any other president could do it. I remember 9/11 in New York, JJ, and there were these disaster loans and everything, and it took months for companies to get it. And then they were giving $5,000 checks to limo drivers. We didn't have Uber back then, who couldn't get to Lower Manhattan because it was shut off for months. And eventually everybody got it. This is going way faster than that, way more efficient. And hey, people like you really do help the process move along and get the money where it's most needed. And for that, we're grateful. We will talk to you again. Hey, questions, comments for JJ or myself and where you're situated with the stimulus, kl@kerrylutz.com, kl@kerrylutz.com. Don't forget, check out our webinar. I'll have a link to the Facebook group in there. And hopefully we'll do a webinar with JJ in the near future. And you can get a CPA's vantage point on this rather than just an attorney's recovering attorney's legal view of things. And JJ, we'll definitely talk again. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.